very good evening to all of you, and thank you for being here today. Eid Mubarak to many of our friends who have joined from different parts of the world. Welcome. As you know, this webinar is a joint effort of IBSL, the Institute of Bankers Sri Lanka, Daily FT, Sri Lanka's leading financial paper, and the Asian Institute of Technology. As with any event that AIT hosts, the program attracts attendees and participants from many countries. So we are fortunate to have here participants from 8 countries. And a quick look back at the time since our last event in Colombo. So at that time, IBSL and AIT launched their partnership with a 1-year professional masters in banking and finance. This was in November 2019. There was a sparkling ceremony in Colombo on November the 4th, attended by many dignitaries from Sri Lanka's banking industry. And the PMBF was launched to be delivered in Colombo at IBSL's premises. This followed the request of many of our partners in Sri Lanka who said that managers in banks wanted to study while working. They could not have the luxury of taking time off and going to AIT. And as you will see, there is a reason why I have this quick look back and share with you what we did in November. Now, since then, what has happened, is probably a familiar story. So AIT and IBSL were planning to start the program in July 2020. Enrollment of participants was to begin in March 2020. And events have since then been quite remarkable, to say the least. So much so that, on a personal note, I can tell you that I was booked and ready to go to Sri Lanka, and all my appointments had been done. And then the COVID crisis broke out, and my trip got canceled, and AIT advised, cancellation of all travels. And we have, all of us have experienced a disruption in the last 3 months that probably has no parallel in living memory. And so what do organizations do when there is a disruption on this scale? We adapt. I think there are no playbooks here. We just have to adapt. We think, we find a way, we somehow try to get on with what we are tasked to do, what our mission is. And so all organizations must adapt and will adapt. And that's no different for AIT. And that, I think, is the main theme of today's webinar. I think whether it is banking or education, industries and people have to adapt, and they will adapt. So what did AIT do? We moved all our education online. Many of our students continue to stay on campus, but they had to study from their rooms. No gatherings were allowed, and all faculty and staff had to work from their home. And it's quite remarkable how people learn to do this in such a short period of time, so much so that people actually have begun to like it and say that maybe this is a better way of working. And so one of the things that AIT entered into in a big way was online learning. And we realized that online learning can be made more engaging and interesting. So often one hears about online learning as self-learning. And there are also reports that people enroll but drop out. But that need not be the case when there is a tremendous amount of engagement, especially from the teaching institution, which can keep students and participants engaged. We also realize that the geographical boundaries become less limiting when we are learning online. Now, take this webinar as an example. As I said, we have participants from 8 countries, but bringing together these participants in a classroom on our campus would have been a much more challenging task. And so the online platforms offer a fantastic opportunity for cross-fertilization of experience and ideas. And we also realize that in-class sessions can be held in any location. It need not be only in Thailand, it can be in any country. And with this realization came our foray into a variety of online offerings. We are fortunate to have a very leading bank from Nepal represented here today. And they have sponsored 50 of their managers for a program on credit competency development. And AIT has found it absolutely delightful to engage these highly committed managers and as participants in this program. And in the process, we realized that online learning can be very interesting and engaging. And so it is going to be with the professional masters in banking and finance. So AIT's degree is widely recognized by governments and private sectors across countries in the region. And we also realize that the online pursuit of an online degree can come at a lower cost. So AIT can optimize costs, and these can be passed on as benefits in lower program fee to our participants. And what I wish to say at the end is that every crisis is an opportunity. I think if some of us thought that this was a cliche, in the last 3 months we would have recognized that this is so. So whenever something has to change, we begin to see how much better it can be. And so it allows us an opportunity to make things better. So AIT's education is still here and going strong. But with the online, we are finding ways to reach more people, bring people from different countries and together, which enhances the quality of learning experience and also optimize on costs. So that is, in short, the story of our adaptation. AIT's education's adapting to changes in the environment, at least with respect to the banking and finance industry. And so this webinar and the ones that will follow in this series are going to be about stories of such adaptation. And I'm delighted that we have a wonderful set of speakers today who are going to share with us at least one significant aspect of the changes and adaptations that lie in store for the banking industry. Thank you very much again for joining us this evening, and Eid Mubarak to all of you. I now hand over the mic to Mr. Mr. Qasim. Daily FT has been a wonderful partner for AIT. So when we launched the program in November 2019, Daily FT was very kind to cover the event, and we are indeed honored that Mr. Qasim has been able to join us here. So Mr. Qasim, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for that introduction and also setting the stage for us to have a very interesting discussion today evening. I'd like to introduce the two panelists very brief. Their profiles are very long, but I'll try to make it very relevant to the audience here. We have Mr. Wijewardena, the former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, who all the AIT people will also know in terms of being a resource person. Mr. Wijewardena had been with the Central Bank for 40 years and ending up as the Senior Deputy Governor. And also he currently serves he's lectures several faculties of the universities, and of course he's also a regular columnist for the Daily Financial Times. The other panel speaker is Mr. Karunaratne, who is the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. He has 32 years of experience in central banking, particularly in the areas of economic and price stability, financial system stability, among others. What we will do is that we'll invite both speakers to make their opening remarks for about 15 minutes on the subject, which is focusing on the post-COVID service delivery with regard to context in Sri Lanka. And since we have participants from the region, also from a regional perspective, and after their presentations, we'll take some questions, both from the audience as well as few questions that we have lined up to the two experts. I'd like to invite Mr. Wijewardena to make his presentation on the subject, and then we'll move on to Mr. Karunaratne.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Venkatesh and Mr. Nista Kasim for the kind introduction. As Dr. Venkatesh had very correctly mentioned, the objective of the present webinar is to identify how the countries involved and affected by the COVID-19 pandemic should adapt to the new situation and make use of the new situation as an opportunity for development. So I would like to take you through some of the technical issues that we are facing and how new technology can be used by the banking sector in order to provide the best services to their customers. And Mr. Karunaratne, the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, will, in his time, he will actually explain to us what the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has done so far and the rationale of the Central Bank's action for this particular work. So what we have to look at is now, we would be looking at the new sign that has actually come up for the banking sector, and we have to take notice of the fact that it is the banking sector which had embraced new technology throughout its modern history. Whenever a new technology was introduced, the banking sector had made use of the new technology in order to outreach the largest number of customers with the cheapest cost available, so that the banking sector had become a winner with respect to the use of banking technology. Now, in the latest episode of banking technology use, before the onset of this COVID-19 pandemic, we have noted that some of the developments that had taken place is that the banks had gone for branchless banking and virtual banking, so that they had made use of the modern technology to maximum in order to cut down their cost, as well as to have a very effective and efficient outreach to their customers. All of the banks had introduced the internet and mobile phone banking, so that the banking customers did not have to visit the bank branch or even the ATM machines in order to get the full range of banking services that are being offered. Then they had gone for advanced and secured payment system, and to any part in the world, you can now make payments through the banking system. Then another important development that had taken place in the banking sector is they had customized the their services based on the customer behavior and the customer's preferences, which is very much important, because we are normally in the belief that one shoe will fit all the feet, but here, since the customers are different and their requirements are different, their behavior is different. Now, banks are in a position to provide their services to customers based on their individual personal differences. Then the technologies like blockchain technology are being adopted by banking sector, which would make their services to customers very transparent. So this is where we stood when the COVID-19 pandemic had hit the entire globe. So this is actually happening in the advanced countries, but now, of course, the economic fallout of COVID-19 had made it necessary for banks in all the countries, including the emerging economies, to adopt to these type of new technologies that might rescue the banking sector and take the banking sector to the new normal that is been developing throughout the globe. So we are looking at this new normal that is coming up. And what happens is that now what we notice today is that in the absence of an effective vaccination against the virus, COVID-19 can be controlled. At most, it can be controlled and not totally eradicated by the global community. Therefore, it seems that the whole world will have to live with COVID-19 for some time. Some people have put the timeline for 2 years or 3 years. At most, it will be at least 3 years time period has been planned by many specialists. So what is happening is that the type of the preventive measures that the global community has adopted, like the social and physical distancing, we thought that it would be a temporary phenomenon, but now it appears to be a permanent one, becoming the order of the day rather than the exception. So this is one of the important factors that has to be taken into account by banks when they plan their new operations. So the one good sign in this case is that since banks had already invested in technology and they are tech savvy, they have the staff which are able to provide these services through new technology, and therefore the banks can do the new adaptation, as Dr. Venkatesh had mentioned, with the minimal pain to themselves as well as to the customers. So this is one of the important things that we are noticing in the case of the banking sector, because they are in a position to take us through the new developments in technology. So what happens is the banks in the next maybe 1 or 2 year time period, we will have less social and physical contact with customers, and therefore, because we cannot meet them socially in person in the banking premises as we are doing right now, and so we will have to have a less contact with them socially as well as physically, but we may have to connect ourselves to them through new technologies, and that new technology comes from the internet, and therefore internet will become the main mode of providing these services to customers by banks. So now, as it is, as a result, the internet services have become the most demanded. So the biggest beneficiary of the new banking order that we are going to develop in the next 1 to 2 year time period would be the internet service providers, because their services have been demanded very much, and also the app developers like Zoom, Google Loon, or Microsoft Team Meeting, which have enabled us to meet people from any part in the globe on a real-time basis without any hassle, would be another type of beneficiaries in this particular sector, because their services are going to be pretty much demanded by the global community. Then they are all free, and apps providers have the capacity to entertain more users, just like the Facebook. Now, initial stage, you may recall, when we joined the Facebook, there were limitations on the amount of data that we could post on the Facebook walls, but now it is practically free. Same thing has happened to other social media like WhatsApp and also Twitter and so forth. So the app developers are right now in a position to entertain more users without overstretching their service capabilities. And as a result, the new bank that would come in the coming decade will be extensively using these apps first, because they will have to first use those apps that have been developed by others. But as the banks have already done, they have been developing their own applications, so that we can expect that the banks would invest their money their brain power to develop their own applications, which are actually customized to their own customers. So that would happen in the next 1 year time period, so that every bank would try to show that it is different from their competitors, because this is important in a world where we are using the same application. If we can show the customer that we are different from other competitors, then it will be the one of the reasons for the customers to join our services. So this is one of the important things that would happen because banks are in a position to do this in the near future. Then, but the challenges that they are actually we are facing now, that the basically what we would be seeing is branchless and virtual banking using artificial intelligence, because this is an important factor, because whenever artificial intelligence has been used, we are displacing the human capital, use of human people, human beings as employees, and the machines would take over most of the routine functions that the banks have presently offering to their customers. And those routine functions would be the acceptance of deposits, processing of loan applications, answering telephone calls, giving advice to customers. All these things would be taken over by machines. But it would help the people inside banks to use their brain power to develop new things. So therefore, they will be freed from routine work, but at the same time, they would be placed in a position to use their brain power to strategize the banking activities, plus develop new strategies so that they could provide better services to their customers. So the physical and human capital in banks have to be reoriented toward this goal. Physical capital includes the IT infrastructure within banks, and also the capacity to provide wider volume of services to the customers. And human capital would actually require the banks to train their staff in the new systems, so that they would be able to provide the services to customers without any problem. So investment in technical infrastructures is a must for banks. At the same time, they have to retrain their staff, and that should be a priority. And because within the next 1 to 1.5 years time period, every bank will have to introduce the new technological infrastructure, and also every bank has to take measures to retrain their staff to attend to new work that they are supposed to do with the new customer base. So it has to be done without any problem. It has to be done seamlessly, as quickly as possible, allowing the banks to make a V-shaped recovery as quickly as possible. So we, at the same time, we must again be mindful of another factor, because the banking customers are not very tech savvy, because the young people are tech savvy, but at the same time, we find the older customers are not tech savvy. So as a result, we'll have to use the customers as throughputs, not the inputs, but throughputs, who would go through the training mechanism within the banking sector. Therefore, they would become well conversant with the new technology that is being adopted. So at the same time, one of the biggest problems that we are facing right now is that in the case of developed countries, the internet penetration has been very high. But when it comes to a country like Sri Lanka, the internet penetration has been even less than 30% of the population of 5 years and above. As a result, there is 70% of the banking customers who need to be brought into the new internet infrastructure, which cannot be done by banks alone. This has to be actually done by governments by providing a service which is known as the global public good, because we are talking about the regional public goods, we are talking about the national public goods, but at the same time, now we have come up with a new requirement called the global public good, where the global community will have to provide the cheaper and safe and reliable internet services to the global community. In that case, what we have to look for is things like the Google Loon. The Google had come up with shooting a balloon into the atmosphere and through the balloons to provide better and cheaper internet services to large number of people in the globe. Similar mechanisms will have to be developed and encouraged by the global community so that customers who are using the new technologies in the banking sector will become an inclusive lot rather than an exclusive lot that we are presently seeing. So these are the challenges we are facing. And I would stop my presentation at this moment, but we would be able to discuss these matters as well as any other matter which the audience is having in the question and answer session that is to follow after Mr. Karunaratne makes his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wijewardena. Excellent presentation to kickstart the session. I'd like to invite Mr. Karunaratne to make his presentation.
Dr. Wijewardena, could you kindly stop? Okay.
Good evening to all of you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening to all of you. First, let me congratulate and appreciate Dr. Venkatesh for organizing this very important event. And also, I would like to be grateful to Dr. Wijewardena for taking us through this very interesting adaptation issues. Now, first, let me tell you the outline of my presentation. That is the page 1. Which indicates the few items with regard to the banking industry in Sri Lanka, how the banking industry behaved before COVID-19, then the emerging needs and assistance that we require from the banking sector, then the what are the needs of the banking sector, then service delivery challenges, which is far more important, and how do we reshape the industry for the future. Let me first highlight the Sri Lankan banking sector, which is, I must say, remain stable, especially during 2019, even though we had a moderate growth of 2.3%. But again, banking system had a lot more challenges during the year 2019. Nevertheless, they managed to record growth momentums in assets, loan, advances, investment, and also deposits. Again, the number indicators that they have shown in borrowings also very encouraging. So if we go to next page, we can highlight the salient features that are indicated in the banking sector. Accordingly, the assets had grown in 2019 by 6.2%. Loan and advances grew by 5.6%. Investment remarkably improved by 12%. Deposit by 7.9%, and borrowing had considered by 4.8%. If we move to the next page, the modest performance of the banking industry was the key feature of the Q1 of 2020. We have seen the reduction in net interest income, and also the foreign exchange income had dried up during the first quarter. Again, the notable reduction in both profit before and after taxes. However, we still see the average assets and the reductions of financial ratios as marginal reduction. So if you go to next page, we will see the first 3 months last column would indicate the first 3 months improvement. So you may see the interest income again had improved by 9.7 versus 10.1 in 2019. But again, the bottom line, the profit after tax remain as it is during the first quarter. But this is mainly getting the impact of the COVID-19. Now, let me show the next page with the achievements or the milestones of the banking sector. I would like to categorize that in three main structures. One is the capital buffers. Second one, we had the prudential accounting norms. And third one is the risk management strategies. As you are aware, Sri Lanka had completed the Basel III capital standard by 2018. That enabled us to have the very strong capital buffers. Again, Sri Lanka is one of the countries that had implemented Sri Lanka financial reporting standard, IFRS, in the South Asian region. One of the countries that had implemented that was in 2002. And also we managed to adopt the SLFRS 9, more vigorous accounting standard with the view of heuristic mind and getting the expected credit loss provisions. So with those things and the risk management, proper risk management and corporate governance framework, Sri Lankan banks managed to prepare the customers and the banks for the worst disasters. So therefore, I must say that the banking sector was resilient with these factors, and all these capital buffers, prudential accounting and risk management strategies had immensely assisted our banking system. That would show by using two basic incidents that took place in 2019. If you go to the next slide, that would show as two incidents in the, I must say that is as a testing incident in the Sri Lankan banking system. One was the difficult situation faced by the construction industry. The second one is the Easter attack that happened in April 2019. So both those incidents tested the banking system, tested the banking system's resilience. And again, they graduated very well and proved that they are sound because of the all the prudential measures adopted by the Sri Lankan regulators and the banking system. But again, in 2020, we faced the disastrous situation with all those good capital buffers. But this time, I will see how we can face for this current situation. If we go to the next page, now I would like to indicate how the assistance that we could expect from the banking sector. Here, what is important is the relationship between the banks and the customers. That is the far more important factor. Otherwise, banking system cannot be run without a very good relationship between the customers. Because of that, customers also need to get some cushion from the banking system while they are having a difficult situation. Similarly, regulators also need to look at the requirement of the banking sector to keep the banking sector afloat. And again, what is important is most of the people of the country, because of the COVID-19, had affected badly, and also the industries. And we have seen the zero income for most of the people. People could not come to work, report to work. And during the lockdown, salary cuts and all sort of undesirable factors had been seen. So therefore, the people got affected and the industries worstly affected badly require some assistance from the banking system as well. But how do we strike a balance? Because banks need to safeguard the interests of the depositors. So therefore, they need to earn a decent return and pay that to the depositors and also to the stakeholders. So therefore, we need to be mindful how we can strike this balance in this scenario. If we go to the next slide, I would like to highlight how the bank should provide this assistance for the customers. There are a number of ways. One is initiate discussions with affected customers and guide them to how to restructure their loan portfolio and how the repayment schedules to be done. Again, help marginalized communities by promoting financial inclusion That is more important factor even to popularize the digital banking. And facilitate financial requirement. And also the entrepreneurs who wish to benefit from new opportunities. We have seen a lot of new developments, new innovations as well. Again, disperse liquidity and refinance funds made available by CBSL speedily. So because central bank also had launched number of schemes to assist the banking community and the customers. So banks should help to speedily distribute these deliveries as well. If I go to the next page, that will show the need to enhance the provisions of the digital financial services. That is with regard to the adaptation. We need the digital banking systems because this is the best operating environment for us to have the digital banking system, and it will never be the same as before, and unless otherwise you have the digital, it is very difficult for you to operate because we had some travel restrictions and all the sort of health advocacy. So because of that, still we managed to function the banking system with these digital mechanisms in place. Again, in terms of the day-to-day operations, banks are compelled to move away from the traditional banking system and also switch to digital contactless delivery channels. And also in this context, going digital is not an option, but it's a must. So conduct marketing campaigns to encourage customers to use online banking systems, web application, mobile application, and bring greater cost efficiencies to banking system is the norm of the day. If I move to the next page, to provide the space for the banking to operate, we as a regulator, central bank also had done their duty. So we have allowed bank to draw down their capital conservation buffers and also facilitate smooth credit flows to the country. Also, we have relaxed certain requirements, especially classification of NPLs and other banking requirement had been relaxed. Again, permitting to convert and cover foreign currency loans in rupees. Also approved several extraordinary measures to strengthen the liquidity position of the bank. We had provided enormous liquidity to the banking system because I think that is again need of the hour. Regulatory relaxation again supported for the digital payment structure as well. So we have adopted somewhat simplified KYC also for banking customers. And also in 2020, March, we launched the campaign called 2020 Year of Digital Transactions. That also helped us to go the extra mile with the digital transactions. And again, banks should optimize on this and on this move forward in providing digitalized financial services to their valued customers. Now, if I move to next page, this COVID-19 posed actually a number of threats for the banking as they could not deliver their traditional customer-oriented business. So therefore, they had to use various other means in order to move in away from the traditional marketing campaign and also the traditional type of business activities. And because of these challenges, wide lockdown we had seen in certain areas, but still banking services could be continued with the limited number of branches open. For that, even in Colombo, the head office branches and the central bank did the all sort of required facilitation. And also with the pace-out approach to facilitate the return of normalcy in economic activities and day-to-day life, banks have recommenced branch banking operations across the island now, in line with the guidelines given by the government as well as the health authorities, while encouraging customers to use online, telephone, and also electronic banking rather than getting into the banking physically. So even with the normalization, we expect this digital banking to continue. Now let me briefly touch the service delivery challenges that the bank face, especially the shift toward online banking and other digital banking channels have led to surge in the cyber security threats as well. Even in the past, we have seen some unfortunate incident in Sri Lanka with regard to cybercrime. So therefore, we have seen some people had been exploiting the banking system. So therefore, we have to be very careful and we have to use the extra precautionary measures. Again, the IT structure that is not widely available as Dr. Wijewardene rightly mentioned. Then again, it's a challenge. Again, IT structure of banks should have enhanced security features, and that can prevent various tests faced by the banking system as well. Now, let me tell you something about the reshaping the banking industry, and it will be the way forward. But the time has now actually come for the bank to consider the reinventing themselves from the inside out, and it is time to better understand the way consumers expect banks to support their financial needs. The current pandemic has forced customers who once resisted online banking to adopt digital banking. And again, it has become new default. Therefore, the COVID-19 led to widespread and systematic revamping of the high-impact digital journey in the banking sector. Therefore, the customers onboarding and again the product origination to deliver a truly outstanding digital experience to their customers is again requirement of the day. The transformation from servicing to engagement, again yet another one important aspect. Thus, the banks require to sell more products via digital channels to compensate the reduction of sales that they experienced in the recent past. If I tell you something on the reshaping the banking industry, and this is the last slide that I have. This will tell how to reshape the banking industry, and here I wish to reiterate the words uttered by Dr. Venkatesh, especially every crisis is an opportunity. So here we have seen a lot of opportunities for us to move past in the digital arena. And again, as we have always seen a number of times here today, adaptation and adaptation of next generation technologies. That's a must. And banks need with accelerated pace of change in the digital market. So therefore, the digital market is the most important concept for next banking future in the banking. And again, the digital banking distribution will be of central importance as the pace of the competition and innovation in digital banking between financial institutions is likely to accelerate. And again, a lot of strain on legacy technology infrastructure. Financial inclusion, as I have already indicated, it is far more important and should be pursued to ensure all citizens have access to banking to support the economic growth during this type of difficult time. So we have to practice this even in the future. We have to continue this digital growth. I think we need to consider this as a blessing in disguise. And competition in retail banking also will likely intensify in the near future by using these digital experiences, and also banks need to increase their agility in execution. So with this, let me stop here and hope to have a good session in the next couple of minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karna, for a very comprehensive presentation on the status quo as well as recent achievements and way forward. Just for participants, I'd like to inform that Mr. Karna is also the Vice Chairman of the Institute of Bank of Sri Lanka, which is one of the co-hosts of today's webinar. I see lots of questions coming in, so that's very encouraging from participants because then it will be very interactive. What we'll do is we have about half an hour for Q&A. I'd like to ask both Mr. Wijewardene and Karunaratne what was so far presented is it's a long list of things that banks have to do. But compared to some of the other sectors, banks have been fairly early to embrace digital transformation. In that context, how do you think the way forward will be? Will it be much easier for banks? Therefore, banks cannot be forgiven if they delay further in terms of making the full distance in terms of digital transformation and some of embracing some of the technologies that you have mentioned.
Thanks, Nista. In my view, banks are already onto the job. They already started communicating with their customers by using the most advanced technology. Customers have also been trained, and as a result, compared to any other industry that we see, banks have been able to adapt themselves to the new normal that is coming up. And as a result, we can always have hope about banks being the pioneers in leading all of us into the new technological world.
If I may add a few things, I fully agree with Dr. Wijewardena, because banking system is the first sector of the country to grab the innovations, because without that, they would have not lived up to this level. Initially, they lived with the telex, and that moved to Reuters and other telecommunication modes. Before that moved to all other industries and other sectors. So therefore, it is far more important to have these technologies with the banking system, because the banks are the blood wire in the economy. Without functioning that well, we cannot see the functioning of the economies properly. So therefore, they have to grab the adaptation. And now we have seen even in our country, we are popularizing even the QR code and other modus operandi even for the general public.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wijewardena did mention in your presentation about is customer ready, particularly in the older generation, then the rural areas. We also saw during the COVID that banks had to send do a lot of mobile banking, the traditional way of mobile banking. Does it sort of doesn't it tell a different story that banks, yes, they were ready, but customers weren't ready? There was a delivery issue. I mean, how would you think this was sorted out?
Well, Nista, what actually happened was this was a shock. I mean, it's an external shock delivered to both banks and all other people in a country. And as a result, none of them was ready to meet it. And what happened is that in a country like Sri Lanka, people still use currency issued by the central bank for transaction purposes. And all of a sudden, when the banks were closed, and as a result, people were not able to get the required liquidity in their hands, it was necessary for banks to send these mobile vehicles with staff to serve the customers. But as it is, the world is now going towards a cashless society, and Central Bank of Sri Lanka is also on a project to make Sri Lanka also a cashless society. As a result, in the next 2 to 3 year time period, when everyone would be using their the digital cash systems, I don't think that this type of necessity would arise, because the currency is considered to be the most outdated and most primitive method of payments among all the payments that we are making today in the world. So therefore, it is better that after the COVID-19 pandemic, we would move away from a primitive and less efficient mode of transaction to a more efficient and modern mode of transaction.
I fully agree with that. Yes, I fully agree with that. And again, with the pandemic situation that we have seen, people rushed to store cash because they could not get some of the deliveries by using electronic means. And we have seen the vendors visited neighborhoods, but they physically, people need to hand over the cash because they didn't have the infrastructure for that facility.
Okay. you mentioned about digital there's digital payments and all that, but in the yes, COVID was a wake-up call to a lot of segments. But how can you, going forward, how can digital payments can be accelerated, more electronic payments? I mean, is central bank sort of pushing the industry and the customers to move towards that? Is the ecosystem ready for that in terms of legal and other infrastructure?
Of course it is, because that is why I mentioned that the central bank had launched the 2020 as the digital year in March 2020. But that also helped to popularize this move during the difficult times that we had in the recent past. But again, we have to start from our home. That is because of that we first popularized that among our employees, and we wanted that to be done even for the bank. But because of these unfortunate events, I think bank could not fully utilize that. But we were promoting QR code and also a couple of other apps to be used by the general public. And we have seen in the recent past the numbers, the growth numbers with regard to this usage of new apps, and that has been enhanced, increased by more than 150%. So that means people are using those apps, but still we need to have more financial inclusion and need to bring that message among other people, and also make it to be more affordable. So we are taking certain steps. Then we have reduced some of the payments for those payment gateways, and likewise we are introducing new ways to bring this popular notion among the people.
There are a few questions, Mr. Kasim, in the Q&A box.
Yes, I saw that. Yes. I will, before I saw some, I'll sort of lead into something. Mr. Vijayan, you mentioned about reorienting the physical and human capital issues, very interesting. What do you do with, I mean, banks are also having their own issues post-COVID. One is extensive restrictions imposed by the regulators and the need to support clients and their own viability issues, prudential compliance and all that. What do you do in this situation where you are stuck with a lot of brick and mortar, and then you are also challenged to go much more mobile, much more digital? I mean, it's not an easy challenge to face. I mean, what would be your advice given the various external and internal challenges faced by banking sector? And also Mr. Karunaratne, whether you can shed some insights. Mr. Wijewardena?
What is the question that you asked, Mr.? Because
we had the challenge that banks also facing some internal challenges of profitability, their own issues about. You mentioned about physical and human capital reorientation. That's one thing, but what do you do with lots of brick and mortar assets that are idling in various places with all these current post-COVID challenges?
Yeah, as Mr. Karunaratne has very correctly he had pointed out in one of his slides, Sri Lankan banking sector had been one of the most profitable sectors in the country. When the real sector institutions were not performing well, the banking sector had actually made enormous profits before taxes, and had been the main contributor to the corporate income tax payments of the government also. And as a result, they had been with good capital base. They had met with the capital requirements of most of the banks. I mean, most of the leading banks in Sri Lanka had met with the capital requirements of the Basel III. And the two types of capital, additional capital that they have to maintain, the capital conservation buffer and the counter-cyclical buffer, All these things had been met by the Sri Lankan banks, and that's why the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, immediately after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, relieved the banks of using 1% of the capital conservation buffer of 2.5% that they had been using in order to stimulate the credit growth in the country. So likewise, whatever the accumulation that they had done in the past could be used right now in this particular emergency to provide new lending without running down in the capital base. But when the time becomes favorable, the central bank would insist that they should go back to the old method of building up the capital base. So therefore, I don't see any problem for the banking sector to come up with the solutions which are required of them to do in this particular COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Karunaratne, you have to say.
Yes, we agree with. I agree with that because we have provided required liquidity, which is the typical item during this hour. But central bank has taken a number of measures to provide more liquidity, and also we have reduced the interest rate substantially. That also provided avenues for the banks to borrow at cheaper levels. In addition to that, we are having a number of other schemes now in the pipeline to provide more liquidity in case of need arises. Also, banks, I think now under the reshaping, they may require to develop new methods as well, because now we might be seeing new products and also we have seen new ventures. Accordingly, they also need to encourage and provide facilities for new introduced channels as well. So through that, their human resources, I think, could be ideally used, even we have the digital in place.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on to participants' questions. There are lots of HR related questions. I think some were answered during the presentation, but I thought for benefit of for further clarity, whether you may mention about it. What is the biggest HR challenge post-COVID with regard to banks? Can the panel give some further clarity?
Yes, Nista, the biggest challenge right now is to reorient the banking staff to serve the customers under the new normal that we have accepted as the order of the economic system. The new normal is that we have to work from a distance. The social and physical contacts should be kept to a minimum, and we have to do everything via internet. And as a result, the staff will have to reorient themselves to meet this requirement, because some of the customers are more tech savvy than the staff in the banking institutions. So therefore, unless they train themselves to meet the new challenge, what would happen is there will be frustration on the part of the customers, and they might move from banks which are unable to provide them services to banks which have already established themselves as the good tech delivery institutions. So that will be the biggest challenge.
And if I may add, at the same time, certain customers are very traditional type of customers. So even for them to provide a better service, I think banks should be ready. So the challenge is, what are the precautionary measures that the banking staff need to take, especially now I think this virus issue will prevail for some time until we develop a vaccine. So therefore, even in the near future, banking staff need to prepare for extra precautionary measures. So it may be new normal even for them. It will be challenging.
Okay, right. I'll take another question about With regard to digitalization, there's a question from Mohammed Main Uddin, I think. Short KYC may challenge the money laundering issue and more digitalization may bring technology security risk. I know Mr. Karunaratne mentioned about the cyber security, but how can you sort of make this KYC process much more efficient as well as safeguarding the other concerns?
Thank you. I think very good question, because KYC, we have to be very careful about the KYC, especially our country has just come out from the grey list from the Financial Action Task Force. And also we got out only recently from the blacklist of the European countries. So we are very much aware of the danger. So we have been very mindful of relaxing these rules. Especially when we have the simplified KYC, we limited that only for the banking customers. So still we have the trail. And onboarding, we have to be very careful. We haven't done new onboarding customers. And that has been limited to the existing customers of the banking channel. So the new vendor or new party can still get the information with regard to the new customer. And also we have given a time frame for them to submit all the documentation to the banking system, or until once the normalcy returns, they can submit all the documentation. Until such time, we have limited the transaction to the banking customers, and also we have limited the value of the transaction. By doing that, through those measures, we have adequately arrested the AML CFT risk.
Okay, thank you. There is one more question, just a more technical question on the panel. Does the QR code is based on EMV code standard? Is that anyone can answer?
QR code, yes, but the problem is we don't have very many acquirers and channels right now. So there is the only one bank is handling that one right now, but it will be EME sort of method, but it will take some time to develop, but that will be the way forward. Therefore, once we have the QR code, that will provide the platform for all the users. Now it will be different applications, but once we have the QR code, it will be a kind of common application, and maybe we can popularize that very rapidly.
Okay. I'll take one more question. These are not related to. Okay. What is the standard followed to develop QR code payment? That is related.
It's more technical question, I suppose.
Excuse me, Mr. Kasim. We received a question from an AIT alumni via Facebook.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So he's an alumni, Mr. Kamal Uddin, alumni of AIT, asking from Pakistan. His question is, how can we disburse loan in rural areas in near future, because our clients are not that much educated to use technologies? What is the best option to give service to our clients? So let me give a context. So NISP is National Rural Support of Pakistan. So they are one of the leading microfinance institutions in Pakistan, and most of their clients are in the rural area of Pakistan. So may we have the speaker opinion how to help the rural areas in the future? What is the best option to give service to the clients?
Well, Dr. Phuong, it is actually, there's nothing available for banks to rescue these customers in rural areas except going for mobile phone banking, as it is being done extensively in India. The Indian banks had been successfully penetrating a large number of rural-based customers through mobile phone banking, and as a result, the services had been offered to them at a cheaper cost on a real-time basis. The deposit making, loan processing, collecting of funds from banks, and also the most of the banks are now providing their advisory services through mobile phones. So the best alternative available for banks, whether it is COVID-19 or not, is to use a very universal type of a product like the mobile phone, which has become a universal product now, where everybody has become now completely comfortable with the use of a mobile phone, and use them in order to provide these services of the customers in rural areas.
Yeah, Mr. Wijewardene, I just wanted to ask. You mentioned about internet penetration in rural areas, and also the smartphone penetration is also not really 100%, or it's not at a very satisfactory level. In going for these mobile service and online banking, how can developing countries, you mentioned about Google loan project, but what can the government do in terms of making this much more affordable, dividing the digital divide, reducing the digital divide?
Yeah, yes, in fact, Nista, it is not actually a responsibility of national governments today. It is a responsibility of the global community, because it is the global community which is being affected. And as I have mentioned, the provision of reliable and inclusive internet facilities to people has become a global public good. The production of a global public good, the funding has to be done by the entirety of the global community. So that is why I said the experiments like the one that had been done by Google's with respect to its Google Loon should be carried forward and introduced to almost all the countries in the world which are presently underperforming with respect to the internet penetration. Now, Sri Lanka's internet penetration has been less than 30%, irrespective of the fact that Sri Lanka government had been trying to promote it as one of the leading sectors in the country. But if we have a reliable and safe and speedy internet facility available to people, they will go for that. About the smartphone issue, now the cost of the smartphones are becoming less and less day by day. So as a result, there will be a time where it will be like, like a normal commodity, like a coconut. I mean, people would be able to buy a smartphone and use it.
Yeah, the cost of data is an issue as well, no? I know we suppose telecom operators.
Yeah, that is why I said now, if you have a global project like the Google Loon, where the cost of production is less, and also we are taking it away from the traditional, the global community would be able to, provide it at a cheaper cost.
Okay, right.
And it will happen. I mean, it will happen. I mean, in my opinion, the internet will become completely free within the next 2 to 3 year time period.
Okay, fine. I'll take another question here. Again, it's about the customer issue. Even though it has been introduced many digital channels, customers still, they're reluctant to approach those channels, maybe less knowledgeable. So more action should be taken to populate these channels among the community. It's you also mentioned in your presentation, it's always easy to say that, you need to educate the customers. But I mean, as I said, banks have been embracing technology. I mean, they've been rolling out lots of digital products, but the slow adaptation is an issue. With COVID coming into place, I mean, what ways can the banks reach customers, even in terms of educating?
Well, Education, continuing education of customers is a must. And also as I have mentioned, customers should be treated as a throughput through which they would go through the trading program. The banking sector, they will enter the mechanism from one end and they will go out of the mechanism as informed and tech-savvy people. Now, this is one of the important things which the banks will have to do now, right now, because you may recall now, about say 50 years ago, when commercial banks offered the current account facilities, not many people had seen a check. And they didn't know how to write a check, how to sign a check, how to endorse a check, how to make a check for presentation. But now check has become out of date, and it has been taken over by other digital type of payment. So the necessity will make it necessary for people to learn new techniques, because the survival will depend on how far they would be able to make use of these new techniques. Now, good example in Singapore was the payment of bus fares through the digital system. When it was introduced about say 20 years ago, people were reluctant and they objected. But today, it's a normal thing. Similarly, now in Sri Lanka also there was a move to introduce the digital payment system for bus service providers. People are objecting, but once it is introduced and when people see that they can learn it as quickly as possible, it will become one of the normal things. So technology is always feared, but at the same time, technology is loved when people start using it.
So I think there's one more question from Lisa, from maybe Karunaratnam can answer this. Adoption of digital banking is essential. Do you think for central banks, monetary policy formulation will be reoriented as well, under taking digital banking into context? Digital money may take place in the future, so it may be challenging for the regulators as well.
It is always a challenging area. I don't think that even for the central bank could get away from the digital development in future with the other modern technologies. Even the central banks as a monetary policy tool, we may have to use this type of thing. So I don't think there's an exception even for the central bank.
Right. There is a question on cyber security. Maybe someone will want to, Mr. Karunaratnam, we need to maybe to expand on what you mentioned. That is anyway was a risk, number one risk for financial sector, the cyber security aspect. The question is how the banks will manage cyber security as post-COVID. All the banks are moving in digital channel.
Well,
cyber was a risk.
Yeah, thank you. It is a risky thing, but what I see is in the recent past, people have not properly protected the relevant security features. There are a number of security features, but we need to properly secure those security features and properly apply. And we have, in a number of times, we have seen that people have not properly used, and that had led to a lot of frauds. And also now we have to be very careful, even when we are using our digital technologies, even when we use our cards, there are so many protective measures that we can take. That awareness need to be enhanced. I think along with that, because always people who are trying to do this type of activities, they will be one step ahead always. So therefore, they will be creating something for our new products as well. But we have to be mindful the relevant security features that we have applied. We have to be properly follow those things. And even when we are using our cards, even at teller machines, I think we have to be careful. And there are certain tips that we have seen. I think we need to follow those things. If we follow those things, it will not be a threat.
Maybe Mr. Wijewardena can answer some of these questions. There had been lots of issues about cloud, use of cloud in the before COVID. There were lots of debates. you think, including issues with regard to eKYC, you think some of the issues that industry faced previously can be now there'll be more greater consensus and support from the regulators to sort of find solutions and move forward?
In fact, what a good thing that this COVID-19 has done, Nista, to all of us is that all are now on the same boat. The regulators, governments, and business, and banks, and community, we have a single voice now. So as a result, the new normal can be more prudently practiced by the banking sector with the support of both the governments and regulators in order to meet most of these new requirements. And as a result, I see it as a blessing rather than a problem.
Okay. Mr. Karunarath, is a sort of greater realization from regulator perspective? I mean, they tend to be that you had a tougher stance previously, but given the post-COVID challenges, you do think you will be much more supportive for innovations to thrive from the particularly from the fintech and the banking sector?
I think so, because now we all of us need to realize the need, and I think it's a wider acceptance. So it will be much easier than.
Okay. So Wijewardene, you spoke about reorienting the staff, human capital. In the past, a lot of banks used to outsource their call center activities to specialists. With people becoming a bit more redundant, with technology coming, would you advise banks to take more ownership and become, because banks customers may not come to the bank physical branches, but can they sort of enhance the customer service by making it in-house?
Well, most of the routing work that's been done by banks, Nista, would be handed over to the machines in the future, because that process has been taking place. Yeah. And if one goes through the annual proceedings of the Professional Bankers Association of Sri Lanka for the last 10 years or so, every annual meeting had focused on the need for introducing new technology to the banking sector and how the banks should cope with the problems, how they should grow with the new digital environment. So the problem of the some of the people, as I have mentioned, would lose their jobs, the routine work, but at the same time, it is a matter for banks to retrain them in order to do more brainy work. Now, this is when a new technology is introduced, it actually happens to all the economies. A good example is in 1970s when the synthetic fiber was developed through the petrochemical industry. All the cotton growers in Florida and also the Mississippi area in USA, they lost their jobs. But what the government did was they trained them to grow new crops like sunflower and all types of new types of crops which were in demand, and therefore they were seamlessly transferred into a new type of business. It happened in 1850s in Sri Lanka when coffee growers had faced the problem with coffee blight. Most of the people, coffee planters, became bankrupt. Some of them even committed suicide. But they were able to seamlessly transfer themselves from coffee growing to tea growing. So likewise, it's a matter for the banks and the customers to, even the staff, to think of how they should live with new technology and how they should cope with that and how they should adapt themselves. So that is why Dr. Venkatesh said, in his opening remarks, he said that the COVID-19, the biggest challenge for us is to decide how to adapt ourselves.
Yeah, we have come to our last 10 minutes of the webinar. I just want to, with the permission of the two panelists, whether I can take some of the questions which are not related to the subject, whether we should take it or not. Let me know whether I should take some of those questions. But
yes, Nista, you can shoot your questions.
Okay, right. Okay, mainly from the audience. That's what. But I want to know. You see, the whole people are talking
about. Can I have one last question to
yes,
Mr.
please. Yes.
Before taking leave of the panelists, in the programs in AIT, we have always had one brainstorming session on what we call as the future of branches. And participants from many countries, who come to AIT have said that it is easier to open a branch than to close one. Now, in the context of this post-COVID scenario, the value of branches may become less. I recently visited my branch totally out of necessity, but I found that there were hardly any customers and we were separated from the staff by plastic screens. They were all wearing masks and we were also required to wear masks. Now, of course, there is no need to go to the branch unless there is some transaction that is absolutely necessary. Now, if the banks start to rethink about the investment in the branches and they want to wind it down, is there a central bank framework which allows them to do that?
Mr. Karunaratne?
Right now, for the opening and also for the closure, they need to get the permission from the central bank. But when we talk about the branchless culture in the future, that will be more flexible. I agree with Dr. Venkatesh. That will be more flexible.
Okay, fine. Thanks, Dr. Venkatesh, for that question. One question before I move on to some of the questions from the audience and unrelated. With people talking about recession and downturns going forward, and would you see banks finding difficult environment to operate in? In that context, will mergers and acquisitions help in serving customers in a much more efficient way on the way that the lines that you all have suggested going forward?
I think that will be the way forward. Even for Sri Lanka, we have seen large number of institutions. When we talk about the financial sector, it has too many entities. When we talk about the finance companies, we have 42. Even when we talk about the banks, we have 26 banks. I think if the smaller bank could merge with the larger one, they may be in a position to provide a better quality service to the customers. So eventually, we have relaxed the capital requirement and all other regulatory measures. But in 2 years' time, they need to think about those again. But I think this is a good time. This time is appropriate for them to think about the reshaping their industry as well.
Okay. Mr. Wijewardena, any thoughts on that?
Well, what we are actually facing, Nista, is a situation where economies are going into recession, not only Sri Lanka.
Yes.
The whole global economy will go into a recession, and as IMF and World Bank have predicted recently, the global economy would have a negative growth of about 3% in 2020, and some countries like Japan, USA will have a higher negative economic growth. So Sri Lanka is also not insulated from this type of a global development, even though the central bank is working with a positive economic growth of 1.5% for 2020. From all the information that we get from various sectors, it's highly unlikely for Sri Lanka to maintain that positive economic growth towards the end of the year. So my best judgment is that Sri Lanka will have a negative economic growth of about 5% in 2020. So when the economy is in recession, all the sectors in the economy and all the key economic players will be in recession. And banks cannot just be isolated from or separated or insulated from that general trend in the economic system. So they also have to take a hit with the reduced level of profits. They also have to go for various cost minimizing measures. And I have already seen that one CEO of a leading local Sri Lankan bank had mentioned that they will stop going and having outside meals straight away. So likewise, it's a cost and which everybody has to now bear today. And so I hope that banking sector would be geared to seeing this reality and make the necessary changes.
Fine, thank you. Mr. Karunaratne, outside the, this is on the 2-month debt moratorium is not practically sufficient for housing and personal loan customers depending on their segment of income. I think they're asking for an opinion from you.
Well, it is very difficult even for the government and also bank to bear the losses. So we have to be very mindful about the soundness of the banking sector as well. We know it is difficult for customers. That is why central bank had instructed banks to have the debt moratorium between, I must say, between 2 months and 6 months. And depending on the nature of the particular facility that they have obtained. If it is less than 1 million, they can enjoy 3 months. And if it is related to self-employment or the link to real production, it will go up to 6 months. But difficulty that the banks are also having is to bear this type of income loss and also the liquidity loss. So therefore, I think we have to strike a balance between those two. And banks might be offering certain other facilities. For bigger customers, there are some other facilities like investment loan and that type of thing. So if that working capital is not sufficient, they can go for that. But for normal customers, I think housing loan right now, the norm is 2 months. Because it is very difficult even for the banks to bear that pain right now. So that's the situation.
Okay. I think difficult times all round. One last question to Mr. Karunaratne is again on the license, cancelling the license of the finance, maybe can you comment on it? The issue about public trust and confidence.
Yes. As you are aware, the finance had experiencing troubles for a long period. And in the recent past, we have seen that the cash flows were not adequate even to pay the salaries of the employees and also to compensate the interest of the depositors. That had happened from March onward. And central bank is nowhere in a position to fund the finance company because there are no provisions from the various enactments for us to use the public money to for that type of activities. And also last couple of years, we were trying hard to get down an investor, but that also didn't successful. So therefore, right now, the best option would be due to the enormous requests that we received during the last couple of weeks from various quarters, because depositors are appealing to get whatever they have, the small money, even for their daily requirements. So I think it is the need of the day to pay something at least from the scheme or deposit insurance scheme that we have, that would give 600,000. And through that, we find that 93% of the depositors can be fully repaid. We have, there is one of the biggest companies, so 145,000 depositors. Out of that, 135,000 can be fully settled by using the deposit insurance scheme. But with regard to the large value depositors, even for them, right now, we would be paying 600,000. And also we have estimated the value of the remaining assets of the company. Book value is, of course, around 18 billion, but we have estimated to the tune of 10 billion. So if we realize that. But of course, we have to wait for the liquidation process. After that, we may be in a position to pay a substantial portion even for the larger depositors. So we don't really have any other option because we don't have asset management companies and other type of infrastructure in the country, and regulator is not in a position to bail out. And we were trying hard to get an investor, but that also not work out. So therefore, the ideal solution is to use the liquidity scheme and pay off. Otherwise, the pain is for month to run the company, we need 250 million rupees. If we run the company like that for 1 year, that will deplete 3 billion rupees, which is belongs to the depositor. Had we done this 2 years back, we would have secured 6 billion rupees. So I think to keep it a crime, we need to assist the depositors by having the particular deposit insurance scheme. One other note is, unfortunately, most of the people are running after the interest rate, but there are a lot more things to be considered before we invest in any entity. And also when we see the 600,000 deposit insurance, that also recently increased from 300,000. The ideal process now going forward would be you split, if you have more, split that money between financial institutions you have, and also look for more details about the entity before you invest, because ultimately it is very difficult for the regulator to bail out.
Okay, thank you. Coming back to the subject about post-COVID service delivery context, I think the panel did stress that it's digital is the new norm, agility is the new norm, customer focus is another new norm. I think further acceleration of the digital transformation with security and other safeguards is the future or the way forward. I think reorientation of staff was also stressed. Revisiting the brick and mortar model also was stressed. So I think some valuable insights from the two panelists we had. Thank you very much. I think on behalf of the Daily FT, I'd like to thank both panelists for their time and insights, and also the participants for making it very interactive. I'd like to move on to Dr. Venkatesh to wrap up the webinar.
So thank you very much to the panelists for bringing their valuable experience to this evening's discussion. Mr. Karunaratne, Dr. Wijewardene, thank you again, and we hope to see you again on the AIT platform sometime in the near future. Mr. Kasim, thank you for a wonderful job as the moderator, and we thank Daily FT for their valuable support as well. But most importantly, thank you to our all the participants, especially on this day of Eid. So Eid Mubarak again, and thank you for attending this webinar. So we hope to continue these discussions. You know, I think the purpose of these discussions is to understand where are these windows of opportunities, as we call them. You know? So as I said at the beginning, when this COVID crisis struck, you know, we saw the picture differently from how we see it now. And we can see that things can be done differently and things can be done better. And so we hope that these webinars will serve to you know, enlighten our attendees on what these windows of opportunities are and what are the challenges in implementing them. So warm good evening to all of you. And now I hand over the phone to mic to Dr. Phuong, who will offer the closing remark.
Thank you, Dr. Venkatesh. Thank you, Mr. Karunaratne. Thank you, Dr. Wijewardene, and thank you, Mr. Kasim. It has been a wonderful webinar, and we thank you very much for your support. And we look forward to seeing you in IIT platform. Have a good evening, and Eid Mubarak to our Islam friends, and thank you all the attendees. And we also send our warm thank you to all who watch our live streaming on the Facebook platform and on Daily FT website. Thank you for joining us and sending lots of questions. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we should place on record a special appreciation of Mr. Nista Kasim, who came on board at a very short notice and did a wonderful moderating exercise here in Nista. As you have already done, always you had been a wonderful moderator, and here also you became a wonderful moderator. So on behalf of AIT, IBSL at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, we are eternally grateful to Daily FT and also its founding editor, the one and only editor, Mr. Nista Kasim. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Thank you.